Hello and welcome to Ride Rescue. In my previous videos, you may have seen a 1960 Pontiac Ventura bubble top in the background, and I've sat in front of it, I've talked around it, over it. I'm going to start doing a series of different parts about this particular build now. I bought the car 4 years ago. I was shopping online, I was just looking for a project. I was trying to get some ideas of something that maybe I could do a quick flip on. Maybe there's something that would be my next project that I could take to another car show, or just something that was drivable. The Buick project turned out way beyond what my original plan was, and you can go back through my videos and see the Buick. It ended up being a top show car. And with the air ride suspension in that Buick, it wasn't something I could just jump in and take for a drive. It usually take me 15-20 minutes to get the car out. The air ride suspension would have to be aired up. There were a lot of things that I would have to toy with to get it running, get it tuned in, and be able to take off and drive it. So it wasn't something I could just jump in and go. So I was thinking about finding an older car that would be something I could just turn the key and drive away. So that was kind of the intent when I started shopping online and looking for different cars. Well, I stumbled onto this 1960 Pontiac online that the guy had said had been sitting for many, many years, and it's up on jack stands in his garage. So I was very interested in it. I called him, I talked to him about it. I wanted to come out and see it, and he says, well, I've got somebody coming out. I'll give them an opportunity first. I'll let you know if they don't buy it. Don't hear from him. I call him a few days later. Sure enough, he sold it. So I was disappointed, but you know, they come and go. So I've been going on browsing again for weeks, for months. Never really found anything, and this Pontiac pops up again, probably 6 months later. So I call him, and the guy says, yes, I did sell it. And the guy came out to pick it up. He actually had two cars. He had a gray 60 Pontiac bubble top and a red one. The red one had been stored in his garage underneath his house, and the gray one was stored out back. And he wanted to sell both together as a set. And the gentleman that purchased it 6 months earlier, all the tires are destroyed on the car. I mean, it's been sitting on its tires, especially the one in the backyard. It's been sitting on 4 sets of old bias ply tires, and they're rotten. They won't hold air. And the car that's inside the garage was also sitting on 2 bias ply on the back, but it was on jack stands in the front. So this guy buys 2 brand new tires, and he takes the tires and wheels off of the 2 cars, and he takes them into a shop, and he finds 2 of them that are good enough that will hold air so that he can get the car up onto a trailer. So as he's doing this, and he's about ready to drag the old red car out of the garage, he wrenches his back while he's putting the tires and wheels on this car. Well, the guy's in his 60s, 70s, he's an older gentleman, and he's really excited about this car, but his back is really bothering him. So the story goes, months go by, and the guy finally calls and says, my back is all messed up, and I'm sorry, I can't buy the car, so you can keep the tires and put it back up for sale. That's when I found it again. So sometimes you just look at it and say, well, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. So like I said, I called him, we talked on the phone, I said, all right, I got to come out and see him. So I drove up, it was about an hour from my home, everything that I expected. I fell in love with the car. The parts car that was out back had been hit really hard on the driver's side. The car was literally bowed. It didn't really show until I got it home and it was up on the trailer and I was really looking at it. The passenger side of the car actually bowed out. So it had horseshoed the car. My first thought was, man, maybe I can save both cars. Maybe I can find a driver's side for this car and save them both. But it was just hit way too hard. Yeah, it was probably something that could be pulled with a real heavy machine where it could really be strapped down. But this car had been sitting in the backyard. He had put covers over it, but over a 40-year period, the windows leaked. One of the windows, the driver's side, the windows were busted out of it. So snow was getting inside, rain was getting inside. and the whole floor and undercarriage of this car was completely rotted out. So not only I'm looking at having to pull the car and straighten it out, weld on a side, but I was going to have to weld in a floor, braces, trunk, and all the interior in it from it setting wet was just so rusty. It didn't make any sense to keep the car and try to restore it. So it was an excellent candidate for a parts car. 70,000 original miles on it. So I bought them both, and as I'm loading everything up, I've got the red car on a trailer, and I've got all the parts in the back of the truck because he had the whole front clip off the car. Everything but the hood. The hood was still on, but everything else was off, and it was just the frame rails, the front suspension, and the engine and transmission. He goes, "Hey, could I interest you in the original set of tri-power carburetors and the original 8-lug wheels?" He was holding out on me. I said, "Absolutely, I'd love to see him." Well, he takes me back to his workbench, and there's the carburetor, the 3 carburetors, the intake manifold, and it's all there. It's all complete, and it's in excellent shape. It's sitting there under a box on his workbench. And underneath the workbench, covered in cobwebs, is the full set of wheels, brake drums, hubs, caps, beauty rings, lug nuts, everything. He had taken all that off, set it on his workbench to work on this car, put the car on jack stands, put some drums off of the parts car, and the tires and the wheels off the parts car, and there it sat. The front fenders, the reason why he pulled the front clip off, the front fenders had some real heavy rust on both sides, and him and a buddy were going to do that rust repair. And you'll see in the upcoming videos, cut an aluminum tin can, put it over the hole, hold it in place, lather it up good and heavy with Bondo, and that's a fix. So I wanted a little bit of the backstory of this car just before I took off with everything in it. I wanted to know if he could give me the history of the car before he purchased it. And the way the story goes, he bought the car, both cars, from a wrecking yard in northern Utah. And the red car was originally marked as salvage from a police auction in Nevada. The car was abandoned on the side of the road. The police impounded it. It sat in their impound. Nobody claimed it. Couldn't find the owners, so it went to auction. And the car was sold to a wrecking yard. It ended up back in Utah, and that's where it was found. And they just happened to have not only the red car, but they also had the gray car there that was also purchased as a wreck. And so he bought the 2 cars and was planning on building one out of the 2. Well, the red car was marked. It was a branded title for salvage, not for repair. So he couldn't ever get a title for the car. So all I had when I bought it was this certificate from Nevada saying sold as salvage. Well, that's kind of a big deal. I don't know if any of you viewers have ever ran into this before, but typically when a car is marked for salvage, it can't be restored. The red car is in perfect condition, considering it's got a little bit of rust and it's got some issues. It didn't run very well. I'm sure that's why it was abandoned. I did get it started, and it blew out a big, huge cloud of rust and a great big rust pile on the ground as it blew all the rust out of the exhaust. It ran for a minute, and it chugged, and it chugged, and it burped, and it chugged, and it just ran absolutely horrible. So I'm sure that's why they set it aside. And later I found out the camshaft, it had bad bearings in it, and so it was only running on a few cylinders. The cam was so bad that it just wasn't getting a good seal on the valves. It wasn't getting good compression. There was actually a couple of the spark plug wires that were grounding out, so they were arcing, and there was a lot of reasons why. Most likely this car was abandoned when it was in 1975. You can see on some of these pictures the license plate. 1974 was the last time it was licensed. So with all of that knowledge, I was taking a gamble. I thought, well, worst case scenario, I could restore the gray car and use the red one for parts. But it just doesn't make any sense after all those years that can't talk somebody into saying, come on, be realistic. The gray car is a disaster. This red car is restorable. Somehow we need to switch the paperwork so that I can use that gray car for parts. So sure enough, as soon as I got the cars home, got them in the backyard, the first thing I had to address was titling, licensing, and registration. So I went down to the DMV, and the DMV said, you're going to have to get a police officer to come out and verify the VINs, really look over these cars, and then we have to do a background check and a search to make sure the car isn't stolen. Maybe it was left on the side of the road and abandoned as a stolen vehicle. Well, from the 70s, it's not likely there's going to be any documentation in anybody's computer that is going to show up for this title. But you've got to do your due diligence and make sure there isn't somebody that is missing this vehicle that was legitimately stolen. So I went through those motions, and one of the things the guy there at the DMV, who was really a nice guy, saved my bacon, saved the car. He told me, he says, let's go ahead and license and register the gray car as though you're going to restore that car. Then we'll have the police officer come out and look at the red car and go through all those motions and then come back in, and then you can show that, hey, look, I had it inspected. You can see, he wanted me to bring a bunch of pictures. You can see all the photographs. You can see that these two cars have not been licensed or registered for all of these years. I mean, the license plates on the gray car is 1973. So sure enough, I bring in all the paperwork, I bring in all the photos, I have the documentation from the police force that inspected it, and the guy was nice enough to say, lose the paperwork. That was pretty decent of him to say, you know, like, this documentation for this being a branded title, I have the original registration that came with the red car, so it would be fairly easy to trace it back to that owner, but because of me being in Utah and old Nevada records, they said just lose the paperwork. Forget it ever existed. Let's just start over from scratch. Nobody's claiming the car. Nobody seems to want the car but me, so tear everything up. Let's start over. We'll start a whole new registration and titling and licensing for the red car, and now I'm totally clean and totally free to do whatever I want with either one of the cars. Yeah, I had to pay a little extra to license and register the gray car, which I had no intention on doing anything with. But hey, the tax guy got a little bit extra money. The registration licensing got a little bit extra money. Everybody was happy, and now I can move forward and start restoring this car. So the first thing I want to do, I want to just get this car in the garage and see if I can get it running without any major work. And that's what I'll take you through over the next videos. Plans with old cars never go quite as planned. So I'll take you through the stumbles and the hurdles that took me 3 years to get the car actually out on the road, and everything that I went through to get it there. So like I say, I'll start out with just some pictures with this part one, and then over my next videos I'll start walking you through restoring the fenders, restoring the front end, putting everything back together, looking at swapping motors from one car to the other, because the gray car, once I started it, it just purred. But as I start looking into the red car and the original engine and is the original block and is it rebuildable, then all that starts to steamroll and completely changes my direction with the car. So thanks for watching my video. Keep an eye out for upcoming videos. Appreciate you watching. Ta-ta for now.